So we're going to cover the 5 things you need to know from the dev update part 2, because they did a major coverage last week and there was a ton of stuff on the basically the mechanics of the season and what's going on. This was more about particularly how are the builds going to work, what class changes are going to make, what are they doing with gear, and it was pretty freaking awesome. If you had asked me 2 weeks ago if I was going to be excited to play Diablo 4 season 2, like crazy excited, I would have said I have no idea. I would have like we'll see. But right now, after these 2 updates, I think they have crushed it, and I can't wait to get into these. But instead of covering play by play for everything, there's probably tons of guys covering all the details of exactly this number one from this percentage to that percentage. I'm going to cover 5 key things that I think we need to actually understand as normal Diablo 4 players. We don't need to know all of the granular stuff, but this is going to make the biggest difference. And if you want to go check out more, you can always catch one of those guys and see every little detail in every single line. That should be awesome. So the very first thing that I want people to understand is that once we go through this, there is going to be crazy changes to what happens in endgame for all of us, and we understand how these all play together. It is going to basically be a completely different endgame for Diablo 4, and that's why I'm excited, because that's what it needed. It needed something to do in endgame that it didn't currently have. And so the very first couple things I'm going to go through are things that I'm a little on the fence on. I'm not sure if they're great. I'm not sure if they're bad. Maybe they will play out just like they're hoping they will and be a good balance for the game as a whole, but also make it enjoyable and make us feel powerful in game rather than feeling like we got punished for something that we didn't do. So the very first thing, this is probably the biggest one that I am kind of on the fence about, and that is changing up the way that the damage buckets work. So if you've been playing Diablo 4 and you get into endgame pretty much with any class, there is one thing you're going to want to do, and that is basically get as much critical strike chance, critical strike damage, and vulnerable as you possibly can, because the combination and the multiplier on those is insane, and pretty much every class has to do that. So things like overpower or really pushing towards poison or any kind of dot damage stuff doesn't seem to be playing that well. So we're all kind of forced to this one metric. And so that's cool. But it also leaves a lot of issues in, do we have variety in our gameplay? Can we play a certain style? What if we wanted to go an overpower build? Well, we can't, because the cost to doing that is a significant one and it can be rough on our entire gameplay. So what they've done is they've decreased the power, and that whenever they do that, I'm right now we need to bring fans back to the Diablo 4 game. We need to actually allow people to enjoy and have something to do in the game that they didn't really have since release. And so I do not like it when they like try to take a little hit off of like where we get damage right now. But they're going to try to bring that down so the multiplier plays a little bit different. They still can stack on each other. And then they're bringing up how overpower works and then some of the alternate things. They talk mostly about overpower, but these damage buckets will also play off of each other. So you can kind of push into different ones and have multiplicative effects similar to what we saw in vulnerable and critical. But if you want to go high target to one, you can, and you can make it a serious build, and it can stand up to some of the what's currently meta. And so that could be promising for how interesting the builds are, but it is also a take off of the damage. We will get to why I don't think that like overall that might work out very well for us, but right now I'm a little iffy on it. That brings us to the next thing that I think was very questionable. And I know they have to do it, and I know it's a standard for ARPGs and RPG in general, and that's working out how the resistances work. The actual lightning, fire, ice, cold damage, whatever it is, working out so that we actually have to build towards that and add some protections against the elements, not just around physical damage. And if you've been playing Diablo 4, you basically can ignore resistances to pretty much everything. Um, as far as the elements are concerned, they're going to change that. So in order to change this, they have to make the resistances make sense in more places. And they are going to do basically something with the end game bosses that cause us to, each boss kind of has a focus, an elemental focus. And so if you have resistances to that and you want to go run that boss, you can, and you can definitely clear it better. Now, the thing they had to do is then make resistances really matter to the game as a whole. So that basically there has to be some sort of punishment that if you're not at max um, resistances by end game, that you're going to have a tough time with some of what's going on in the game. And so that is pretty standard across. If you look at PoE, if you look at Last Epoch, if you look at even previous Diablos, you're going to see that resistances did play a major role, and it was pretty important to keep those up as high as you could. Now, they're going to help us a little bit in that they are going to make sure that resistances roll on rings and amulets so that we do know what to go after a little bit to get those points. And there's going to be other places to play in the Paragon point and so on. They assured us that there'll be plenty ways to solve this puzzle, but they are giving us a new puzzle that could take some of the slots of our key affixes right now. So those are the two things that I think are my biggest concern, if there is any concern, because by the time this all stacks up, I think this is going to be incredible. And it brings me to the very next thing. You're already crazy powerful for endgame if you get your build right, if you kind of like hit all the mechanics. At a item level, I think the cap's at around 820 right now. Well, they have upped the item level to 925. And so the same range of spread between where we are and where we're going to be. If you've seen some of the stuff online, you'll see that that actually is taking weapon damage up to a weapon with over 4,000 damage per second. That is insane. That's a huge gain. So if whatever's going on with the damage bucket, whatever's going on with maybe some of the fixes that we can't use because of resistances, well, that can go right out the window as far as how powerful we can actually get by endgame. So that 925 is going to matter a lot. And it also, they have made some other changes, and we're going to get into that. But this really adds up into how endgame feels and what you get to do in endgame, rather than endgame being a grueling thing that you barely get to, that it's so rough. And then you try to take down Lilith, there's actually going to be a lot more to do. So the next thing that they did in this whole thing is that they are massively improving the uniques. And there's two reasons for it. I will understand after we get to number 5 in this whole deal. But the uniques have been improved in such a way that they matter to the build, to the class. So the affixes that are on there that didn't matter, that sucked or didn't make any sense for why you would use that item, they have changed those out, and they put some interesting, powerful things there instead. And they've increased the number of uniques. Every class is getting new uniques for this season. So that is going to be awesome. And they're making sure that when you get that it matters, at least to some build. I know like right now, like a lot of times it's like one unique matters and then none of the other uniques matter. And that's just kind of a shitty way to go, because I want to be excited about the uniques dropping. I want them like, oh man, I can finally do this build or something like that. And that's not the feeling I was getting with uniques. It was like, I want the one, all the other ones suck. Let's go. Let's just get this the hell out of my way. So the added part of that I think makes it a completely different end game and it starts adding up is a thing called target farming. If you have been playing games for a while, target farming is the ability to decide you want this particular item because it does something for your build, or it's just awesome or whatever, and you know where to go get it, or at least at a higher chance of getting it. Not a guarantee always, but a place where if you spent your time there rather than roaming the random world and hoping that it'll drop out of a chest or out of a boss kill or out of something, you'll actually be able to go after it. And how they're doing that is with the number of endgame bosses. Each of the bosses have a higher chance for dropping different uniques for every class. So whatever class you are, there'll be a grouping of uniques. If you go target that boss and you get the resources to kill them over and over again, and get good at killing them, you will actually have a higher chance of getting the item that you want, way beyond what we're seeing right now. So that, to me, if you've ever played a game that allows for targeting, it is really neat. It's really neat in that you can go after and get your build together faster. You can also test different builds, that you can, even if you're doing bosses for other reasons, an item can drop that's unique to, or not unique to that boss, because you can drop an open world, they did say, but it's the same normal percentage. In the boss fights, it'll be a much higher percentage. So you can grab something you didn't know you wanted, and then you look at it, holy crap, I could go to this entirely different build. That's going to be awesome. What do I need to do? And you can start building around unique items. This allows for a lot of variety in endgame. Boss targeting, item targeting, really building out builds that are incredible that have not been seen yet. This is all going to be possible. And the wrapper on this, the thing I think that makes the biggest difference and why endgame's changing forever, is not only did they give us all these things to do in endgame, for the first time, they have gotten, I think, leveling to 100 to a decent length. They have, if you did level 100 in season 1, in season 2, it's going to take 40% less time. It finally gets us to a place where endgame is going to change forever, because they made it so accessible to get to level 100 now, that the time between season 1 and season 2 is going to be down by 40% to get there. It means a ton more people are getting to endgame. But even better, you're not going to be burnt out by the time you get there. And so now all these extra things to do, target these bosses, go after special gear, try unique builds, try to maximize your resistance in a different way, play with different damage buckets, is going to be all on the table again. and allow you for a lot of gameplay well past 100. So if you want to find out more about things like how fast we are going to move to level 100, I did a full coverage on the first dev update that started talking about the mechanics and some of the major changes to the end game. And you can catch that video right here and catch all of the details of it. I went in length to show you exactly what's happening because I think the mechanics of the season is with the changes that we talked here are just going to make it crazy powerful. And like I said at the beginning, I am crazy excited about this season. I did not think I would be, but right now I am.